Here's something that might surprise you in the ancient world. Having a woman's name listed before her husband's was about as rare as a CEO putting their intern's name first on a major project. But that's exactly what we see with Priscilla and Aquila.
That really catches my attention. What made this couple so unique in a time when women were rarely given such prominence?
Well, they were essentially running this fascinating hybrid operation, part tent-making business, part spiritual mentorship program. And get this, they ended up mentoring one of the most educated speakers of their time, a guy from Alexandria, which was like the Harvard of the ancient world. And
So you're telling me these business owners were teaching someone who probably had the equivalent of multiple advanced degrees? That's pretty bold.
exactly. And here's what makes it even more interesting. Apollos, this brilliant scholar, had somehow missed a crucial piece of the spiritual puzzle. He only knew about John's baptism, which is like having a smartphone but never discovering it can connect to the internet.
Hmm, that's such a perfect analogy for what was happening. He had all this knowledge but was missing something fundamental.
And what's really fascinating is how this connects to what happened later in Ephesus. Paul meets these believers who, like Apollos, were missing crucial pieces. When he asks them about the Holy Spirit, they say they haven't even heard there is one.
That must have been such a mind-blowing moment for them discovering there was this whole other dimension to their faith they knew nothing about.
Oh, absolutely. And when they finally received the Holy Spirit, the transformation was immediate. They started speaking in tongues and prophesying. It's like they went from running on a backup generator to suddenly having full power.
You know what strikes me about both these stories? Nobody was necessarily wrong, they were just incomplete.
That's exactly it, and it challenges us to think about what we might be missing. You know, in the ancient world, Alexandria had the largest library in existence. With over 400,000 scrolls, Apollos would have had access to all that knowledge, and yet he still had more to learn.
The humility it must have taken for someone with his credentials to learn from tent makers, that's pretty remarkable.
And what's even more interesting is how this whole situation played out. Instead of publicly correcting Apollos, Priscilla and Aquila took him aside privately. They understood something we often forget, that sometimes the most important teaching happens behind the scenes.
Well, that certainly challenges our modern approach to correction, doesn't it? Today, everything seems to happen on social media.
You're right. And here's another fascinating detail. Historical records show that tent making in the ancient world was actually a highly skilled trade. These weren't just people throwing together simple shelters. They were craftsmen working with expensive materials for wealthy clients.
So they were essentially successful business owners who were also spiritual mentors? That's quite a combination.
And the impact was huge after being mentored by them. Apollos went on to become one of the most effective teachers in the early church. The text says he powerfully refuted opponents in public debate, showing from the scriptures that Jesus was the Messiah.
The ripple effects of their mentorship must have been incredible.
Here's what really gets me thinking: if these tent makers could have such a profound impact on their world, what might be possible for us today? What more perfect understanding might we need to receive or share?
That's such a powerful question to end on. It really makes you wonder what pieces of the puzzle we might be missing in our own spiritual journey.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway, that no matter how much we think we know, there's always room for growth. Just like Apollos, we might be doing well with what we have, but God always has more in store.